let's go ahead now and jump into actual documents and show you the custom coding and how you can go about. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and go to settings and toggle back and forth. So over here, this is what we call our document level viewer. So this is an email, looks like I mean, it doesn't look like it has too much data in it or too much information in it, but this is an email like we're accustomed to seeing if we wanted to review this on a document by document level. And so over here, we have these different fields. The discovery fields are going to be where you can mark something as responsive or privileged or confidential. The default for everything, whenever you create a new database, you only have these options to mark a document as responsive, non-responsive, requires follow-up, not reviewed, privileged, not reviewed. And all documents upon import are marked by default as not reviewed. Even if I go and look at other documents, like even though I've viewed this document and I go and move to a different document and then come back to this document, it doesn't change and it doesn't say that it's been reviewed. I can look over here and see that this document has been viewed and who it's been viewed by when, but it just hasn't, no changes have been made to it. There's no review document history, no redaction, no highlight history, anything like that. But it's also important to be able to mark documents and say why they are responsive or why they are privileged. And there's a couple of different reasons why. So like when you want to mark a document as responsive, you can customize why it is responsive for certain themes or people or issues within your case. So we could see like termination, sexual harassment. These are all custom codes that I've created in this training database. And where you can do that is over in settings, coding, responsive issues, where you can create these that pertain to your case. And this is where I would recommend, again, having that internal meet and confer to talk about what issues you want to be looking for within these documents when you're going through the review process. So because you don't want to get halfway through the document review or all the way through and then say, oh man, you know what would have been nice to be able to search or filter on is for documents that are responsive for this issue. And then you have two choices. You can either go back, you can create that responsive issue, go back and re-review those documents, or you can say, it would have been nice, yeah, but we're not going to do that. And so this is where you can go about creating these. It's very simple. You just click create new, type in the name of your responsive issue. You can give it a color and then hit create. The colors are more so probably going to be important as you move on to the litigation suite. So I always recommend, if you can, when going through the coding, just kind of changing up the colors depending on what type of responsive issue there is. And so these responsive issues are clearly for internal purposes. We wouldn't want you to be providing this upon export and producing the reason why these documents are responsive to opposing counsel, because you wouldn't want to make it any easier on them. But with the standard templates that we have set up, you would not be producing that. This would just be internal information. You can customize it to have the responsive reasons on there for the export, but you would probably only want to do that with like co-counsel or someone like that. Whereas the privilege status, the reason you would want to create a custom reason for why a document is privileged and mark each document with a reason why is so that when you produce your priv log, you're not just saying, I'm not producing these documents because no, they're privileged. Just trust me, they're privileged. That's really not going to fly. A judge is going to send you back and say, you need to go re-review these documents and give a reason for each one of them and say why they are privileged. And so if you create again, settings, coding, underneath responsive issues, we have the privilege codes, and you can customize these as well. So let's say you've got the attorney-client privilege, or this document you're working on a case between Coke and Pepsi, and you need to keep some documents privileged because of Coca-Cola's secret formula. You can go ahead and mark those documents as you're reviewing them and say, this is privileged because of secret formula. And then when you create your priv log, it will say the reason that all of the documents are, which documents are not being produced and why they're not being produced. The next thing down here is confidentiality status. And so I'm going to toggle back over here and show you the coding over here. These are all the confidential codings that I've created. You can pick and choose and say what it pertains to. If it's a document that's confidential, you could go ahead and say confidential in all caps. And when you go through that bait stamping process and it re-images those documents with the bait stamps, it's going to apply the confidentiality status, and that document, on each page of that document, it will say confidential in all caps. So you can see that we've got, excuse me, you can see that we've got highly confidential, confidential in all caps. I believe that these two come with each database, but you can also create whatever it is that you want it to say. Subjective, protective order, highly confidential, attorney eyes only, but you can really make this say whatever you want. I put Jack rules in here just because I'm a little bit of a narcissist, and like I wanted to be able to stamp my name and say Jack rules on specific pieces of paper. But you can use the reason I put that there is to show you that you can customize this however you want. So if you need to be able to customize specific documents and you want to have like your firm name or something along those lines, you can use the confidentiality codes for that as well. So just something to keep in mind as you're working with confidential codes. It doesn't have to deal with confidentiality. It probably mostly will, but something to keep in mind as you go through that process.